Hi guys, it's Marshall here, and this is episode 6 in Exploring Codependency. It's not who you are. Last episode I mentioned I was going to talk about rejection, so we're going to jump right into it. Rejection and codependency are like best friends. Codependency is a coping mechanism, right? That's how I see it. That's the way I frame it, is that codependency is the strategy we used to survive love neglect. That neglect was created through repetitious rejection of our needs, wants, and our individuality, our person. So rejection plays a very deep role in codependency. Our needs were rejected, our wants were rejected, our being, our presence, our person was rejected. Not just once, but chronically, over and over and over. And so what happened is we internalized that rejection with a conclusion. And that conclusion is that I'm not worth loving. I'm not worth liking. I'm not worth caring about. My feelings don't matter. I don't matter. These are the kind of messages we concluded with from the experience of the neglect, the criticism, the abuse, the dismissal, the indifference, the contempt, and the attacks that we felt in the codependent narcissistic relationship we've been living through. So rejection and codependency are linked. Like, you can look at codependency being the result or the symptom of this chronic rejection of who we are. Now, there's something we also did with this that was automatic. We didn't really have a choice in this. It's just kind of the way it works for children. Is when we got this feedback consistently from the parent or from the caregiver, we internalized that as part of who we are. So this internalized rejection becomes a filter in which we see the world. And that filter is called exclusion. We're excluded from being loved, being included, being wanted, being desired, being liked. We're the rejects of society. We're the outsiders. We're the loners. We're outside the box, that kind of thing. And this shapes our internal relationship to ourself. So we walk around carrying an immense amount of shame for who we are, an immense amount of hurt, heartbreak, and a lot of times anger, even rage. There's this term called abandonment rage that comes out when we start to heal, when we start to deal with the isolation that this rejection has created for us. Now, there's a trick here, and I encountered this personally, and I encounter it when I'm working with clients. And when we start to heal our codependency, we have to face our relationship to rejection, because there's no way to eliminate rejection. It's a natural process of life. Earlier today, I went shopping, and I went through the store, and I picked my tomatoes, but I didn't pick the potatoes. I picked, my salads, but I didn't pick the meats. I was rejecting things left and right. And that's a very, very normal process for choosing what works for us in our lives. And this is the secret to the healthy and empowering point of view on rejection, is that it lines us up with our happiness. I have this saying I give to my clients, and that is that our happiness exists on the other side of no. What we want is on the other side of that no. When people reject our advances, our requests, they're pointing us towards our happiness. They're saying, I can't give that to you. I'm sorry, move on. And then that empowers us to learn how to detect and experiment with other people. And eventually we will find a yes. See, there's this trick here with rejection. It's not just reconditioning our experience and interpretation of rejection. It's also understanding that rejection will lead to connection eventually. We will find people that belong with us, that we belong with them too. We find a mutual fit and understanding. This empowers us to build friendships and relationships in a healthy, proactive manner using a question that's very, very important. Now, codependents are given a different question than the one you're going to learn here in a moment. The question the codependents wrestle with is, how do I fit them? So now we're just trying to give ourselves up so we get their approval. When we're coming from a healthy dynamic with rejection, we're asking a very different question. That question is how do they fit me? So we're the ones making choices about who we're going to allow and who we're not going to allow in our lives, who we're going to connect to, who we're going to invest our time in, if they reciprocate an interest on doing so too. This is where transformation has to happen within us. Because remember, that internalized sense of rejection came out as, I'm not worth it. Well, for us to respond to rejection in a healthy and empowered way, we need to be able to nurture a solid core sense of worth it, of having value. Not just value in what we do, but value in who we are, in our presence. I teach this pretty extensively in Law 5, Embrace You Within the Foundations course. We start to learn what it is to embrace ourselves, to understand what it is to love and like our beingness and our attributes, and how to share and communicate those things, how to affirm and praise them with ourselves, so that we are coming from a relationship to ourselves that's not dependent on their approval anymore, but it's actually dependent on our approval. See, growing up in a healthy, normal parental relationship, what happens is the infant, toddler child, their image, their self-image, their value, their understanding of the world is attached to the parent's reflection and feedback. Well, we got toxic, false messages through that feedback mechanism, and what that did was it ruptured the attachment we have with the caregiver. This put us in a position of feeling threatened by the person or persons that we also depended on for feeling love and validation and protection, acknowledgement and attention. So now we have this really anxious or avoidant or disorganized attachment, like we discussed in a couple episodes ago. Well, we've got to heal our relationship to that rejection. We got to come to a place, well, we got to heal it, which means we're going to move through the pain, through the grief, through the anger, through the anguish, and we're going to emerge out of it as someone that understands that the rejection that we experienced from the parent was about the parent and not about our worth. We take autonomy and authority back over our worth. We internalize that and keep it with ourselves. We hold it sacred. This allows us to transcend the abandonment wound and go into new attachments, new relationships from a different angle. So remember, my example here is that the child is attached to the parent's validation. In a healthy model, the parent's reflecting back to the child their value, their worth, their identity, their qualities, and their attributes. Eventually, that child will transfer that attachment from the parent to themselves. And we see that a lot in teenagers because they're becoming themselves. We don't go through that process very well because we're still aborted in the experience of trying to get that validation from the parent, but we're still growing and maturing. So we enter adulthood with this attachment problem. Healing that attachment means we transfer it to ourselves rather than another person. And then we enter the world from going, how does this person fit me? How do they complement my boundaries, my preferences? How do they add to my life? Because we are owning our own attachment. We are owning our own understanding of our value. We're not putting it on the table for them to validate. We're approaching it from the angle of, hey, I like you. I'd like to see how you fit in my world. That's it. So rejection becomes a powerful tool in this place because we're going to meet people we like, we're going to meet people we don't, and we're going to say yes and we're going to say no, just like they are. It's a normal, healthy function to say no. But the healthy relationship to rejection is circumstance. It's not value. This is really, really important to understand. Codependency, rejection was all about our value. In the healthy paradigm, rejection is all about the circumstance. It's the combination of two or more factors and what it creates, which is what we typically would call relationship. And sometimes that just doesn't work. We don't want the result it produces, so we say no to it and we move on to another option. This brings up another key element here about the way we think. Codependency gave us the impression that the world is scarce, that love is scarce, that connection is scarce, that being liked is scarce, belonging is scarce. And this scarcity mindset traps us in a state of fear, so we just take whatever we get. We're not really auditing how it fits with us. To make rejection work powerfully for us, we need to switch to the abundant mindset, where we realize that there's always another opportunity, and it's a better opportunity, especially if we get rejected or we have to say no. There's always a better opportunity. We have to nurture that energy and that visual mindset in our head in order to navigate rejection from a place of power and honesty for ourselves. And I teach that with Law 3 in Foundation course. Building our abundant mindset and bringing peace to the fear that came with the scarcity mindset is essential. So that is our episode 6 about rejection and dealing with codependency. You'll see the next episode in a few days. Thank you guys for being a part of this. If you have questions, just post them below. If not, I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.